Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about 10 montage mistakes. Basically 10 things you want to avoid while making a montage. And if you avoid these 10 things, I know it'll improve the quality of your work and just improve your montages in general. As we go through these, I'm going to show some examples, most of them from my montages, but let's get into it. Number one is not syncing your gunshots to the beat of the music. So basically on any high impacting shot, so mainly sniper shots or the last bullet, should be synced on the music because it's too hard to sync all of them. If you have, say, a semi-automatic gun or a fully automatic gun, you don't want to sync all of those shots because that's too many shots and it'll look over edited. But the high impacting one, like the last shot that kills and sniper rifle shots, should always be synced on the music. Number two is something I've suffered from before in my montages: overdoing the color correction, like getting too stylized with it. It's referred to crushing the blacks, but basically means bringing down the blacks in the color correction where the pure black is everywhere. There's just too much of it. So this is what it looks like. I'll show you some examples. So this is what a normal shot, and then crushing the blacks is bringing it down like that. It translates bad, especially on YouTube, because YouTube will compress it with an H.264 codec. And H.264 codecs are known for making video files smaller because it compresses the blacks and white, or the contrast, you could say. So if you already have it dark or your black's pretty low, putting it on YouTube is just gonna crush it more. And usually people are watching on like their phones or their low quality monitors, and that doesn't help at all. So you don't want it too dark, basically, is the main thing. Don't crush the blacks. Number three is if you're adding black bars or letterboxing to your montages, basically changing the aspect ratio, is you have to make sure that's on the top layer, or that's the last thing you do, because you don't want to add those black bars and then do color correction on top. You want those black bars to be true black. It's a simple concept, but just make sure the black bars are on top and the color correction is underneath. Number four is having your audio levels peak. You want to make sure your audio levels are brought down just enough so that in the high impact moments, like when a sniper rifle is going off, or any gunshot, and the music's swelling up, that you're not peaking, you're not clipping the reds on your audio levels. Especially again, when putting it onto YouTube, people are listening to their lower quality speakers, their phone quality, and peaking will just ruin the audio. I've seen lots of montages where someone has a sniper rifle sound effect and they copy and paste it. I won't say any names. That alone is already peaking, and then you add the music to that and it sounds bad. You can really notice it in some older montages. Number five is a personal grudge I have with Halo montages, especially, or I see this in montages and everywhere, is when people use TWIXTOR to slow down stuff, but they keep like the warping effect. If I ever am slowing down something, I want it to look smooth. If you see the O-flow or the optic flow basically around the person, which is kind of blending frames together, I think that's a failed slow motion. I would then go back to rather having it steppy, not using TWIXTOR, than using that. You want to get it so it's just perfectly slow coming up, or whatever your effect is. And if it shows that kind of warping, don't do it. Like that's just not a good solution. It doesn't look good. No one thinks the TWIXTOR warp looks good. If you're going for a stylized thing, no, it still doesn't look good. Rather have it steppy, or don't do slow motion, or I'll give you some solutions at the end here. Number six is don't reuse music or songs from big montages. I have done this again in the past, and a lot of editors have, but I think it's better to leave it alone, find your own music, and maybe use the same artist or find the same style, but using the exact same song from another montage, people are gonna link back to it. You're gonna get like 30 comments being like, this was already used and blah, 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 which you knew that going in. You might even be paying homage to it, but I find new music. I wouldn't suggest reusing it. It's just leave that one alone. They got that song, let it be. Number seven is within one montage is reusing one effect too much. Again, I've suffered from this using the Twitch RGB split effect in a lot of my older montages. And if you notice my new ones now, I don't use that anymore. Using certain effects at specific moments, very good, very powerful. It can really add to it, even using the RGB split. Fine, you use it on a big shot, a big moment, but using it over and over again looks like that's the only effect you can do, and it brings down the impact of you using the effect one time, and it's just a blur of the same effect over and over. I've seen a lot of editors do this, and they're good at it, and it looks good. After the fifth time using the same effect again, I'm almost clocked out. It's like you gotta mix it up, keep it entertaining, use it once in a while. Number eight, I don't really see in montages, because people are good enough to realize that this is terrible, is awkward camera movement. You want to keep it smooth and crisp. You don't really see someone in theater mode flying around all crazy. Obviously, no one wants that. Make sure it's nice and smooth, and keep it professional like that. Number nine is overusing motion blur. So I like to add this to a lot of angles, and I've done this in all my non-pro player montages, is just slap on the plugin Real Smart Motion Blur, tweak it a bit, and there you go. Over the years, I've been toning it down a lot. Still using it in certain scenarios, but just less of the effect, because once motion blur is on so much all over the place, it brings down the quality again. And I can link to several of my montages where I first discovered the plugin and I just was slapping that on, and it looks good. Like adding motion blur to something that doesn't have motion blur, and I mean specifically the camera, like the angles, the third person angles, not POV as much, looks great. But you have to know your limits and you have to not overdo it, because then it just looks sloppy and not as good. Number 10 is something we all try to avoid anyways, but it's bad camera tracking. Either we're adding text or a metal or some kind of effect tracked onto a map shot, cinematic, and it's going smooth and it flickers for a second. That I'll link to. Even in my most recent video, I had that in a Smash video. You can see it's tracked smooth and it flickers for a second. That's a mistake. That's bad camera tracking, and you don't want that. You want it to be smooth. I didn't redo it there because I'm lazy. Don't be me, be better than me. But most of the time in a big Halo montage, if it doesn't track perfectly, I'll get a different angle, I'll try again, and I'll try to get solutions for it. Now this part I'll make fast. We're gonna go into the solutions for all 10, even though some of them I already talked about. So number 1, not syncing gunshots onto the beats of your audio, sync it. Number 2, overdoing your color correction. Just bring up your graphs here, and when you're doing color, and just make sure the blacks you'll see aren't being crushed. So watch that line, just have them touch it so that you have some true blacks, but don't bring it all down or they're gonna be crushing them. Number 3, color correction obviously goes underneath black bars. You want black bars on the top of your timeline, so they're the last thing that renders through, so there's no color correction on top, leaving the black bars true black. Number 4, when you're doing your audio mixing, just pay a really close attention to your audio levels in the audio bar there, that you're not peaking. Now, once in a while, I'm gonna kind of go back on what I said, once in a while on like the loudest part of the song and the loudest gunshot are synced together, I let a slight peak go through. A slight peak go through. I let it peak for a second there because that's a crazy moment. To bring that down would drastically bring down the levels of everything else. So I mainly mean don't let it peak on like the normal gunshots and the normal music. Just maybe on those high, powerful moments where there's so many audio levels stacked together, you could let it peak. And if you're wondering why I'm filming in my kitchen, it's because I'm so pasty white and it's very bright out, as you can see. My windows, I just look like a ghost, so I have to go somewhere darker. So here I am with a candle in the background, setting the mood. Number 5, the bad TWIXTOR slow motion. For that one, like I said, I would rather just go back into not using TWIXTOR, or I would try TWIXTOR again to get it kind of slightly less. And then if you really want to use it, I would add a few things to help hide it. I would add maybe a fog or a flare going over top of it. I would add camera shake so the camera zooms in and shakes a little. All these things kind of distract you from like the slow motion. It's not perfect, right? So now you can compare before and after, and you can see it looks better, or at least it looks better because it's hiding how bad the slow motion is, right? 6 and 7 are straightforward. Don't reuse a song someone used. You don't need a tip for that, and don't reuse effect too much in your montage. You don't need a tip for that. You just know, okay, I'm gonna tone down, not overuse this effect that much. Number 8, no awkward camera movements. So for that, just take your time really when you're capturing angles, and if you're not happy with something, go back and capture it again. Like scrap it, go back. There's no shame in that. Half the stuff I make, more than half the stuff I make, you'll never see. I make it, I don't like it, throw it out, go do it again. That's what happens when you're trying to make it as good as possible, or you're trying to make it up to a quality you're happy with. And if it's just slightly off, it's not as good, go redo it. Number 9, not overdoing motion blur. I would YouTube tutorials of settings other people have for motion blur, like Real Smart Motion Blur, and finding what they do. And then I would just tone it down a bit from that. You can, in certain moments, say like the camera's moving fast, the song's picking up, have motion blur a little more prevalent, like you can see it more. But in the slower moments, tone it down or even take it off. My newest pro montage, that I'm not saying the name for yet, I'm not using the plugin Real Smart Motion Blur. I just want to keep it clean, crisp. But in all my other videos I have, so. Number 10, bad camera tracking. This is gonna go back into the angles basically. If the camera track is just not working, you've tried several times, you need to redo the camera movement, or you need to redo getting the angle. Basically get the angle smoother, slower, crisper, maybe a higher frame rate so you can slow it down and keep it nice and smooth, and then tracking will be easier. If you still can't get it, don't track something. I'd rather have an angle without something tracked on it than having an angle with something tracked. That isn't that good. That was a long video of me talking in my kitchen. Those are 10 mistakes I see common, some of them not. If you stuck all the way through, let me know some mistakes you think I failed to mention, or some pet peeves you see in montages that people do all the time, and just those little things kind of take you out of it or bring down the level of professionalism and quality when you see it. So let me know, and thanks guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Oh, I'm so white. Pasty.